great LSD plot.
Listen on BBC Sounds. Now, I hope you enjoyed your extra hour in bed this morning, courtesy of the clocks going back. In my house, the 3 children are very excited about Halloween tomorrow. In fact, we're having a Halloween party tonight because my sister and her children are over. It's going to be lovely. And I've got the perfect guest to help me through this evening's events. Lisa Fearn is with me now. She runs cookery classes for kids and is full of good ideas for simple, scary food for Halloween. Lisa, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much.
Very good. Now, I was on your website last night and it's called A Shed. And I couldn't believe how many different classes for different age groups and different types of people you have. So go on, tell our listeners all about then what you've got going on in The Shed.
Yeah, well, we started about 12 years ago, and for those who remember a long way back, it was called the Pumpkin Patch back then. And I started in the house, in my own kitchen, primarily teaching young children, sort of 7 and 8, 9, to cook some really nice, healthy foods that we'd grown ourselves a lot of as well. Actually, so we had a little garden, we'd go out and harvest and all of that. And then move on 10 years, we got some funding to renovate an old cowshed, and that's why we renamed it A Shed, because it is a shed. 10 years ago, it had cattle in it. Now it has loads of kids cooking in it.
Oh my goodness, my children would love what you do. And you said, you were originally called the Pumpkin Patch. So Halloween is very much at the heart of what you do, Lisa. Now then, what can we make? What can we make that's easy? Say you're having a gathering and you're having some children around and you want to make something easy for them, some snacks.
I love pumpkins. I grow pumpkins. I eat pumpkins. This is why I named my business the Pumpkin Patch originally. They can be so tasty, but the least tasty, believe it or not, are those carving pumpkins. The very round ones. They're a little bit sort of uniformly orange colour. But I must say, in the shops at the moment, if you go and look, you can find all sorts of different coloured squashes, pumpkins, different sizes. My favourite is the Crown Prince, which is the bluey grey one. It's a little bit smaller, but the flesh is dense and it's so full of flavour. It's a bit nutty when it's cooked. It's really, really nice. Then there's a small, very round, like a cricket ball size Cookery. Again, such a gorgeous flavour. So if you're going to cook with pumpkin, go for those unusual varieties. They're so much nicer. And also the butternut squash.
It's really interesting you should say this, Lisa, because last weekend we took the children. We go every year now to a pumpkin patch and we sort of get a load of pumpkins and then we decorate the entire house. And actually, I never know what to do with them. Now, we started carving last week, but, we've got loads of stuff left over. So all I can think of is soup. I mean, but what else do you do with all this stuff that's coming out of the pumpkins?
I love soup. Don't be tempted to just literally boil up the pumpkin flesh to make a soup. Start off by adding a good amount of onion into a pan with a bit of butter and a little bit of oil, and keep turning it over a low heat for maybe 15 minutes until it's not browned but caramelized and translucent and soft, and the room will smell divine. And then add that bulk of pumpkin that you've carved out of the middle. Obviously, you're going to discard the seeds and the sort of the stringy bits. But then if you're going to eat into the sides, it doesn't matter how much or how little you have, pop that in there with maybe a couple of carrots or a sweet potato, as I said, to bulk it up. And then add some ginger, add garlic, add some Cajun seasoning or some curry blend that you're familiar with and really like. You can even add an apple for sweetness. You can add pepper. You can add so many different things to it. And you'll end up, I would blitz it as well. I would make it smooth, a smooth soup. And what you can do then, if you've seen some of those teeny weeny little pumpkins, take the top off, carve it out. And an ice cream scoop, by the way, is the perfect tool for taking out the innards of a small pumpkin.
Good tip.
And then pop them in the oven to warm up, but not cook thoroughly. And then you can serve your soup in the little pumpkin. I don't think any child is going to say no to soup served in a little pumpkin.
Oh, lovely. You see, I'm terrible because I'm attracted to the pumpkins depending on, I like a range of colours. We've got some white ones. We've got the little mini orange ones because they look really pretty on shelves and stuff around the house, don't they? But I never think about what we're actually going to do with them afterwards. And I don't like just throwing them because it's a waste. Pumpkin pie, maybe?
Pumpkin pie, not a favourite of mine, I have to say, because there's a lot of sugar in pumpkin pie. But moving on to other things, for instance, if you're into soups and you want to serve something in the pumpkin, how we're going for a scary green soup. All you have to do is make your usual soup with an onion and a potato and add loads of spinach or watercress into it.
Oh, delicious.
And you've got a really dark green smoky soup, which again is very healthy. And I mean, how old are your children at the moment?
1, 3 and 5.
So you see the 3 and the 5-year-old, we had a wonderful class last week. They're a little bit young, aren't they, for carving? Because I'm always scared of sharp knives, slippery pumpkins, the flesh inside is slippery. So what we did with the little ones was paint them. I got some poster paints and then newspaper on the table, and they just painted on their pretty faces or their sad faces. Great or whatever idea. They want to do, or basically just cover them with everything and then chuck glitter at it. They can look amazing.
That will be music to my husband's ears, because I keep lining up like 12 pumpkins and say, right, come on, Charlie, quicker. And he said, Al, it's a lot of work carving pumpkins, but actually painting them, the boys can do that themselves, which would be wonderful. Okay, so we've sorted the pumpkins, but let's move on to sort of Halloween themed treats then that we can make for the children, tonight and tomorrow.
Well, if you want to sort of go down the science route and, if you've got little jars and maybe, a lot of spices these days, they come in test tubes in a little wrap.
Yes.
You can empty your spices out, and if you make smoothies in sort of green, orange and red and various other colours, you can pop a little bit of the smoothie in each of the test tubes and in your little flasks and jars, and then you can add a few little worms and spider sweets in, and they look like you've had a sort of a very interesting time in the chem lab,
Lisa, some brilliant suggestions there. We're going to take a break now. We're going to listen to the 1975 with I'm in Love with You, and then we'll talk autumn and winter food and what we can eat to warm us all up. Alex Jones with you on BBC Radio Wales this Sunday morning, and joining me is Lisa Fearn, who knows a thing or two about cooking for kids and in fact the whole family. Now then, Lisa, this is my question for you. I've got small children, 1, 3 and 5 as I said. How do you deal with fussy eaters? The oldest one and the youngest one are brilliant, but the one in between, Kit, he exists on fresh air. Honest to gosh. So what would you suggest then?
It is difficult, isn't it? And you just think to yourself, I've raised them the same, I've fed them the same, they've had the same environment. Really, the science proves, apparently, I haven't proved it myself, that you have to put new foods on a plate at least 15, 16 times before they see it as the norm and they find it acceptable, and therefore they're not scared by it, they're not put out by it, and then eventually they might be tempted to just pick it up, even if it's inadvertently. They're talking or they're chatting and then they just pick something up and they put it in their mouth and they think, oh, not so bad after all. But I mean, what I try and do in my workshops is to get them making actual meals, not just the cakes with icing and sprinkles. Everybody eats cakes with icing and sprinkles. But when they're making a little bolognese or a tomato ragu, or they're making their own pasta, having put so much love and effort into it, they're very reluctant to say, I don't want to try any. I'm not saying they will like it, but at least by having that sort of ability to say, I'll try a little bit, then eventually it becomes more normal. I mean, you might not like it, but that's fine.
I think you're right as well. By giving them some ownership of what they've cooked, they are more likely to try it at least, and sometimes enjoy it as well. So let's go back to the classes that you do with children then, because of course, even if parents don't want to take their children to classes at the minute, the weekends are wetter, the weather has turned a bit, and it's quite difficult to know on a wet weekend what to do with the children at home. So what would you suggest instead of, as you said, I don't want to be always making cakes for them because that's the stuff they will enjoy, but there is a lot of sugar. It's nice sometimes to make some healthy snacks too, isn't it? Any suggestions for that type of thing?
Well, I would suggest don't make it a challenge for yourself. Don't try and make a new recipe with your children when you're not familiar with it yourself, because you're going to get stressed. We all get stressed with a new recipe.
I can't even cook, Lisa. So yes, it would be better to be familiar with something before we start.
Stick with what you know. So it could be just a Welsh cowl, and they can just sit next to you. I tend to use the old, my Mamgie's butter knives.
But chopping for them is so good, isn't it?
Yeah, it gets them used to just getting the cutting action. They're not going to cut themselves, not on one of those knives. Cut them a little batten, not a whole carrot, and make family meals. Even get them to help you making your sandwiches for packed lunches. Get them making their own choices. And again, you're giving them a little bit of ownership.
And let's look at the family then as a whole, because everybody's very busy and it's quite hard to make nutritious, homemade food. But that's what everybody's craving as the nights draw in and it gets a little bit colder. Give me some sort of dishes that are easy to make, you can put on before you go to work, and when you get home, you've got something delicious for the entire family.
Yeah, well, use things like slow cookers and Ravens and the things that you can prepare the night before to start with. That makes life easier. You come home and you've got something already on the boil, already half made. So and then just think of interesting seasonal flavors. I love a minestrone soup. We talked a lot about soups today. Minestrone soup, such a hit of flavor. Lasagna, always a favorite. You can have it with salad. You can have it with garlic bread. And then what else could you have? Think of things then that are easy to put together. And maybe on a Friday night, how about a tapas night where you empty the fridge of all your leftovers? So any bits of cheese left over, any yogurts left over, and we call it tapas, basically it's leftovers, but it's a fancy name for it. And it just helps you to empty your fridge, and then you can start again on Saturday, and it makes life easier and simpler, and hopefully save money and time.
Well, we love a tapas night, especially if there's a margarita to go with it. Lisa, thank you so much. It's been such a joy to talk to you, full of tips. Honestly, I'd love to move you into my house. It's been lovely. Thank you so much. Lots more to come here on BBC Radio Wales this Sunday morning. Coming up after this, though, it's the news, travel, weather and sport.